The desert stretched endlessly under a burning sun, its golden dunes swallowing every sound and shadow. A man named Daniel trudged across the sands, his steps heavy, his throat dry, his heart heavy with despair. Just a day ago, his wife Alara had been walking beside him. Together they had set out to cross this wasteland, guided only by hope and a worn-out map. But the desert was cruel, and in one single blinding sandstorm she was gone. He had searched until his body nearly broke. He screamed her name into the wind, but only silence answered him. The desert took her without mercy. Every hour since then, Daniel had felt as if part of his soul had been buried under those shifting dunes. Alone he stumbled on, the sun scorching his skin, the endless sand swallowing his strength. By the time night fell, he collapsed to his knees. The stars above glittered cold and distant, mocking his suffering. He closed his eyes, ready to surrender to exhaustion. But then, from the corner of his eye, he saw something moving in the starlight. A shape glided across the dunes, too smooth to be human, too deliberate to be a trick of the desert wind. His instincts screamed danger. He forced himself to stand, though his legs trembled. From the darkness came the hiss of scales brushing against sand. A tall figure emerged into the moonlight. It was unlike anything he had seen. Its upper body was shaped like a human's, muscles sculpted and powerful, but its skin gleamed with faint patterns like snake scales. Around its arms hung ornaments of bone and metal, ancient in design. But what drew his eyes, what froze his breath, was the head. A serpent's head, sharp and proud, its emerald eyes glowing faintly in the dark, tongue flicking the air. Daniel staggered back, but the creature moved closer. Its tail, thick and coiled, slid across the sand with fluid grace. The night wind carried the faint sound of its scales scraping the earth. Daniel clenched his fists, though he had no weapon, no strength left to fight. The snake hybrid stopped only a few feet away, its gaze fixed on him. Then, in a voice both strange and familiar, it spoke. Its tone was low, the words stretched like the hiss of sand. "Daniel," the sound nearly broke him. That voice, though warped, echoed the one he knew better than his own. His heart pounded. His wife's name slipped from his lips, a whisper carried by desperation. "Alara?" The creature tilted its head, the serpent eyes unblinking. Its lips, or what passed for them, moved, and again came that twisted yet familiar voice. "You searched for me." Daniel's chest tightened. His mind refused to accept what his eyes told him. His wife had vanished in the storm. He had feared she was dead. But standing before him was something both alien and intimate. It was her voice, her memory, trapped inside the body of this hybrid. Tears blurred his vision, but fear held him stiff. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice breaking. The hybrid studied him in silence, the desert wind whistling between dunes. Then it slithered closer until he could feel the cold breath of its serpent form. Its words cut through him like the edge of a blade. "The desert took me. The desert gave me back." Daniel stumbled backward. His mind spun with disbelief. He wanted to hold her, to reach out, to believe it was truly Alara, but the creature's scales glistened in the moonlight, and its tongue flicked with reptilian hunger. She was not the same. She was something else, something born from the desert's cruel will. The night stretched on, heavy with silence and dread. Daniel's heart fought between fear and longing. Was this still his wife, hidden beneath the alien form? Or was it something entirely new, wearing her voice like a mask? As the moon reached its highest point, the hybrid extended a scaled hand toward him. The gesture was almost human, almost tender, yet filled with the weight of something ancient and unknowable. "Come with me," it said. Daniel stood frozen in the shifting sands, his pulse echoing like a drum in his ears. The desert was no longer just a wasteland. It had become a place of transformation, a place where love and fear twisted together. And now, faced with this impossible being, Daniel realized that his war had only just begun. Daniel's heart pounded as the serpent hybrid's hand hovered before him. In the moonlight, it looked both strange and familiar. Its fingers were long, ending in sharp nails, yet the motion of reaching out was the same gesture his wife used to calm him whenever fear overtook him. His throat tightened. Every part of his mind screamed to run, but something deep inside whispered that he should stay. The desert was silent except for the wind. Daniel's breath came in harsh gasps. He looked at the creature's face, at those glowing eyes that seemed to pierce his soul. Then, trembling, he stretched out his own hand. His skin brushed against the cool scales of the hybrid. The touch made him shiver. It felt alive, strong, but not human. The hybrid tilted its head, and Daniel thought he saw something pain, maybe recognition flash across its reptilian features. The creature whispered his name again, the sound heavy with longing. "Daniel," he swallowed hard. "Ilara, is it really you?" His voice cracked as the weight of the question pressed down on him. Instead of answering, the hybrid turned its gaze toward the horizon. The dunes shimmered faintly under the moon. It spoke slowly, as if choosing words with care. "The desert changes. It takes and it gives. I was lost. Then I was found. But not as before." Daniel's legs shook. The words struck him like lightning. The desert had stolen his wife, and in return, it had reshaped her. She stood now as something both human and alien, something ancient. His chest ached with confusion. Was he supposed to love her still? Was she even the same? The hybrid seemed to sense his turmoil. It leaned closer, the scent of sand and stone heavy on its breath. "You must decide. If you accept me, you walk beside me. If you deny me, the desert will keep me forever." Daniel could barely breathe. He wanted to scream, to cry, but his throat held only silence. The desert was no longer just a place of sandstorms and thirst. It was alive, bending his fate, rewriting his love. The hybrid turned suddenly and slithered across the sand with smooth power. Its tail left deep trails in the dunes. Daniel hesitated, his body frozen, before forcing himself to follow. Each step sank into the sand, but he pushed forward, drawn by fear and hope. For hours they moved under the moonlight until they reached a valley hidden among towering dunes. In the center of the valley lay ruins, half buried in sandstone pillars cracked with age, carvings eroded by time. Strange symbols shimmered faintly on the surfaces as if alive with some hidden energy. Daniel stared, his mouth dry. "What is this place?" The hybrid's voice echoed softly. "A temple older than memory. The desert chose it as my cradle. Here, I awoke as what you see." Daniel stepped closer to the ruins. The carvings showed serpent-like figures wrapped around humans, their forms merging in strange ways. His chest tightened with unease. It was as if the desert had always known, always prepared for this. The hybrid turned to him, its emerald eyes glowing brighter in the shadows of the ruins. "You still see me as lost. But I am not gone. I am both. Human and serpent. Ilara and more." Daniel's head spun. He tried to cling to the memory of his wife's smile, her laughter, the warmth of her hand. But standing before him was a being who carried her voice, yet bore the weight of something vast and alien. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why you? Why us?" The hybrid placed a hand against one of the glowing carvings. Light spread outward in soft waves, illuminating the valley. Its scales shimmered as it spoke. "The desert chooses those it tests. You crossed into its heart with love strong enough to challenge death. Now it has bound us both." Daniel stumbled back, the truth pressing on him. His wife had not simply been taken by chance. The desert had marked them, pulled them into its ancient design. The hybrid turned again, its voice deep with finality. "If you stay, Daniel, you must learn the desert's truth. If you run, you will never see me again." Daniel's pulse thundered. His war was no longer against thirst or sandstorms. It was against fate itself. Daniel stood frozen in the ruins, the sand shifting softly beneath his boots. The carvings on the stone walls glowed faintly, their strange light dancing across the serpent hybrid's scales. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Every detail of the creature in front of him reminded him of Alara, her stance, the way she turned her head, even the soft rhythm of her breathing. Yet the serpent head and long tail shattered that memory each time he dared to hope. The hybrid moved with an unnatural grace, circling one of the stone pillars as though the ruins were familiar. Its voice echoed, calm yet powerful. These walls speak of a covenant. The desert has always demanded balance. Life must give way to change. That is the price. Daniel stepped forward, his fists clenching, his voice cracked with desperation. Why you? Why my wife? The serpent hybrid stopped, turning its glowing eyes on him. For a moment there was silence, heavy and suffocating. Then it spoke, softer than before. Because love is stronger than fear. Because you would follow me into death. The desert chose us both. It needed a vessel. And the first became that vessel. Daniel felt as though the ground had been ripped away beneath him. He wanted to scream at the desert itself, to curse it for its cruelty. But instead he whispered, I just wanted to save you. Not this. Not whatever this is. The hybrid's tail brushed against the sand, leaving a long trail. It slithered closer, its scaled hand reaching for him again. And you did save me. But nothing survives here unchanged. Daniel turned his gaze to the carvings, trying to make sense of them. They showed men and women being consumed by serpents, yet rising again as something new. Some carvings even showed the hybrids leading tribes across the dunes, their forms honored, not feared. His stomach tightened. Was this transformation not a curse, but something sacred? The hybrid placed her clawed hand on his chest. The touch was cold, yet filled with a strange warmth beneath. He flinched, but he didn't pull away. You fear me, she said, voice trembling like the faintest memory of Alara. Daniel's eyes burned with tears. I don't know what you are. I want my wife back. For the first time the hybrid lowered her gaze. Her long tongue flickered once before she spoke. And I want to be her again, but the desert keeps what it takes. I am no longer only Alara. The silence stretched until Daniel's knees weakened. He fell onto the sand, pressing his hands against his face. His mind spun between grief and longing. He still heard her voice, still felt her presence, yet everything about her was wrong. And yet, leaving her felt impossible. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a sharp, dry hiss. Daniel lifted his head, startled. The hybrid's eyes narrowed, scanning the dunes beyond the valley. We are not alone. From the shadows of the dunes, more shapes began to appear. Daniel's breath caught as serpent-like figures slid forward, their bodies massive, their scales glinting in the moonlight. Unlike the hybrid before him, these creatures bore no human features. They were pure serpents, some as large as trees, their eyes burning with hunger. Daniel's blood ran cold. What are they? The hybrid stepped in front of him, her tail coiling protectively. Guardians of the desert, they sense your doubt. They come to test you. The ground trembled as one of the great serpents slithered closer, its body winding around the ruins. Its hiss was deafening, its tongue flicking in and out like a whip. Daniel's knees nearly gave way, fear clawing through him. The hybrid's voice was firm, commanding. If you run, they will devour you. If you stand, they will judge you worthy. Daniel's heart thundered so hard it hurt. His hands shook violently. He had no weapon, no plan. But when the hybrid turned her glowing eyes back to him, he saw a glimmer of the woman he loved. The same look she gave him when she believed he could do the impossible. He swallowed, forcing his body to stand straight despite the fear. His voice cracked, but he managed to whisper, "Then I'll stand." The hybrid serpent lips curled into something that almost looked like a smile. Good, because the desert is watching. The guardians hissed louder, circling the ruins, their massive coils shaking the ground. Daniel's trial had only begun. The ground shook as the massive serpents encircled the ruins. Their scales caught the moonlight, glowing faintly as if each one carried the desert's secrets on its skin. Their hisses filled the valley like a chorus of whispers, old and merciless. Daniel stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face. His legs wanted to run, but the hybrid's gaze held him steady. "They test your heart," she said, her voice low but clear. "If you falter, they will tear you apart." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry as sand. "I don't even know what they want." The hybrid stepped closer, her tail curling protectively around him. "Not what you do. Who you are." The desert sees the truth inside. One of the guardians slid forward, its body coiling around a broken pillar. Its head loomed above Daniel, its golden eyes burning like fire. It opened its jaws wide, showing fangs longer than his arm. A hiss roared out, shaking his bones. Daniel's knees buckled, but he clenched his fists and forced himself upright. The hybrid placed a hand on his shoulder. The touch steadied him. "Remember why you came into this desert. Hold on to it." Daniel closed his eyes, blocking out the sight of fangs and scales. He thought of Alara, the woman who had walked beside him through storms, who had laughed even when their water ran low, who had whispered to him at night that love would guide them through. His chest tightened with pain and longing. He had come to save her, even if it killed him. When he opened his eyes again, he met the serpent's gaze and refused to look away. "I won't run," the guardian hissed louder, but then pulled back slowly, its eyes narrowing as if considering him. The other serpents shifted, their massive bodies stirring the sand. One by one, they slid closer, surrounding Daniel in a tightening circle. His heart thundered, but he held his ground, his breaths deep and steady. The second serpent lunged, its head darting forward until its snout stopped inches from his face. Daniel didn't flinch. He stared back even as its forked tongue flicked against his skin, leaving a cold sting. His chest rose and fell, but he refused to move. The hybrid watched silently, her expression unreadable. She did not step in to shield him this time. It was his test. The third serpent moved behind him, its tail brushing against his back. Daniel's body screamed to run, but he stayed rooted, fists clenched, sweat dripping down his arms. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs, yet he held on to one thought: "I will not abandon her. I will not abandon us." That minute stretched into an eternity as the serpents circled. Their hissing slowed, their movements growing less violent. Finally, the largest of them all raised its head high, towering above the ruins. It let out a sound, deeper than thunder, a hiss that rolled like an ancient chant. The hybrid bowed her head. "They see you. They accept you." Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. His body shook from fear and exhaustion. But inside, a strange calm spread through him. He had not been broken. The massive serpent lowered its head toward him, its golden eyes unblinking. For a moment, Daniel swore it nodded. Then, with a hiss like wind over stone, the creatures began to withdraw. One by one, they slipped back into the dunes, their bodies vanishing into the shadows until only silence remained. The valley was still again. Daniel stayed on the ground, his chest rising and falling. He looked up at the hybrid, whose eyes glowed softly in the ruin's dim light. "You stood," she said quietly. "Now the desert knows your heart. You are worthy." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "Worthy of what? What does it want from me?" The hybrid stepped closer, her tail brushing across the sand. "To walk with me. To carry both the burden and the gift. This is no longer only my fate. It is yours as well." Her words struck deep, and though Daniel wanted to protest, he knew she spoke truth. The desert had not only remade her, it had chosen him too. The carvings on the walls glowed brighter, casting light across the ruins. The hybrid extended her scaled hand again. This time, Daniel didn't hesitate. He reached out and took it. The desert had tested him, and though his war was far from over, he had survived its judgment. Daniel's hand trembled as he held the hybrids. Her scales were cold against his skin, yet beneath them he felt a faint warmth that reminded him of Ilara. The ruins glowed brighter around them, the carvings shifting with light as though alive. Strange symbols pulsed, whispering across the stone. Daniel stared at them, unease crawling through his chest. "What is happening?" he asked, his voice low. The hybrid's serpent eyes met his, steady and calm. "The desert accepts you. Now it shows you the path." As she spoke, the carvings flared, and the ruins seemed to breathe. The sand at their feet stirred, pulling back to reveal a hidden stairway leading downward into darkness. Cold air rushed from below, carrying the scent of stone and age. Daniel's pulse quickened. He didn't want to descend into the unknown, but something in the hybrid's face, something soft and almost human, gave him courage. They moved together, into the stairwell. Daniel's footsteps echoed against the stone, each step sinking him deeper into shadow. The glow from above faded until the only light came from faint lines etched into the walls. The symbols glimmered faintly, guiding their way like stars. The air grew heavy. Daniel's chest tightened, as if the desert itself pressed down upon him. He forced himself to keep walking, his hand brushing the wall for balance. At last, they reached a vast chamber hidden beneath the dunes. In the center stood a stone altar, cracked with age yet still humming with strange energy. Around it lay statues of serpent hybrids carved in lifelike detail. Some looked human enough to recognize emotions on their faces: hope, fear, sorrow. Others were almost entirely serpentine, coiled and towering. Daniel froze at the sight. His stomach turned. "What is this place?" The hybrid's voice was quiet, but each word echoed with weight. "The heart of the covenant. Here, the desert binds love to survival. A human and a chosen one must join, or the desert takes them both." Her words sank into him like blades. He shook his head, his breath catching. "Join? What does that mean?" She stepped toward the altar, her tail sliding across the floor with a soft hiss. "Not flesh, not body, spirit. The desert weaves us together. If you accept, we live. If you refuse, I return to the sand. And you die with me." Daniel's legs weakened, and he leaned against the wall for support. His mind spun. He wanted his wife back, not this. He wanted her laughter, her warm touch, her gentle smile. Yet he also knew he could not abandon her now. Even in this form, even bound by forces he could not understand, she was still Ilara in some way. The chamber vibrated faintly, dust falling from the ceiling. The statue's eyes glowed faintly as if watching him. The desert was waiting for his answer. He forced himself to meet her gaze. "If I say yes, what happens to us?" The hybrid's lips parted in something like a smile, though her fangs glimmered. "We become one. Two souls bound. You will never again walk apart from me." Daniel's throat tightened. The thought terrified him, but there was something else hidden beneath the fear. A flicker of relief, of belonging. He had already chosen her once when they had faced storms and hunger together. Could he really turn away now? Before he could speak, the chamber shook violently. The statues groaned as cracks spread across their surfaces. From the darkness beyond the altar came a low, rumbling hiss. Daniel's blood ran cold as two massive eyes opened in the far shadows. Glowing red like embers, the hybrid turned sharply, her tail lashing. Her voice was filled with urgency. "The Keeper has awakened. It will not let you leave until the choice is made." Daniel's body tensed, fear ripping through him. The sound of scales dragging across stone thundered through the chamber as the Keeper moved closer. Each hiss like a storm building in the dark. He looked at the altar, at the hybrid, at the impossible being approaching from the shadows. The desert's test was not finished. The price of his choice was about to be revealed. Asterisk, the keeper's eyes glowed red in the chamber's darkness, each as wide as a shield. Its hiss rumbled like thunder rolling across the dunes, shaking the altar, the walls, even Daniel's bones. The sound carried the weight of something ancient, something that had watched countless lives rise and fall in the desert's endless sands. Daniel staggered back, his chest tight with terror. He had faced the serpent guardians above, but this was different. The keeper was no test of courage, it was judgment itself. The hybrid stepped between him and the advancing shadow. Her scales caught the faint light of the glowing carvings, her tail curling protectively. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling yet strong, "the keeper demands the choice now. If you refuse, it will take us both." Daniel's throat was dry. His mind spun, fighting the truth he had tried to avoid. "I don't understand why it has to be this way," he said, voice breaking. "Why couldn't the desert just let us go?" Her emerald eyes softened, and for a moment he saw her, the woman he had loved before the storm, before the desert took her. Because love that survives here cannot remain ordinary. It must become more, or it is swallowed by the sands. The keeper's massive coils shifted, scraping against stone. Its head lowered, jaws opening to reveal fangs long enough to pierce stone. Its hiss shook the chamber, a warning, a countdown. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at the altar, glowing brighter now, waiting for him. He looked at her, his wife, yet not his wife. Human and serpent, Ilara and more. She held out her scaled hand, her voice steady despite the looming terror. "If you take my hand now, we live together, bound forever. If you turn away, we die." He closed his eyes, memories flooding him. The first time he saw her smile. The nights they had held each other against the cold. The way she had whispered his name with love, not fear. That voice still lived in her, even if her body had changed. The desert had taken much, but it had not erased what they were. Daniel opened his eyes. His fear had not vanished, but something deeper had risen in its place, resolve. He stepped forward, placing his hand firmly in hers. The altar blazed with light, flooding the chamber. The carvings on the walls pulsed, alive with power. The keeper recoiled, its hiss shaking the ground, but it did not strike. Instead, it lowered its massive head and bowed, its red eyes dimming. Daniel gasped as heat surged through his chest. The light wrapped around him and the hybrid both, weaving their forms together not as flesh but as spirit. He felt her heartbeat inside his own, her memories flowing into him, her fear in the storm, her pain in the transformation, her love for him that had never faded. At the same time, she felt his grief, his stubborn will, his refusal to let go. When the light dimmed, they still stood as two, yet something unshakable now bound them. They were no longer simply Daniel and Ilara, they were joined, two souls carrying one fate. The hybrid serpent lips curled into something that almost resembled a human smile. Her voice was soft but steady. "Now the desert cannot take me from you. Not ever again." Daniel's eyes stung with tears. He reached and touched her scaled face without fear this time. "You're still Ilara, that's all I need." The keeper gave one final hiss before retreating into the shadows. The chamber grew still. The glow of the carving softened until only faint light remained. The altar cracked and fell silent, its purpose fulfilled. They climbed back toward the surface together. The desert air was cool beneath the stars, the dunes endless and quiet. For the first time since the storm, Daniel did not feel alone. Hand in hand, they stood at the edge of the ruins. The desert stretched out before them, vast and merciless. Yet Daniel felt no fear now. The desert had tested them, reshaped them, bound them together. And though they did not know what path lay ahead, they would walk it side by side. The desert had taken his wife. But in its strange, ancient way, it had returned her, and given them something unbreakable in return.